I'll put it bluntly, there's a very big need for a shift in how our government currently operates, and their systems in turn. See, our current way in governments are not structured to be sustainable within the modern era. They're not even structured to be sustainable at all. We have entitlement programs which were built for smaller populations, growing at a faster rate and dying younger. This means they were not built to accommodate our modern population and its growth. Take Social Security, for example. As much as people scoff at calling it a pyramid scheme, it by definition is. Those who are working currently, those at the bottom of the pyramid, pay into it, and then those at the top receive, those who are already retired. And then, once these people who are working get to the top, retire, then they get the money instead from new people who enter the economy and thus start working. That is a pyramid scheme in its structure and in its function. The problem is, such schemes are designed for the pyramid to have a small amount at the top and a large amount at the bottom. The idea being, especially in Social Security's case, to distribute the pain of taxation among all workers so that those who are retired can get a safe pension without worry that, they're overburdening any individual. Here's the problem. As retirees grow in number, and as the amount of people living older and older increases, this naturally hits a snag. The population needs to grow even more and even faster, while simultaneously, the country has the same amount of land. And so, you naturally face pressures that cannot be sustained. Even if we assume that Social Security increased the amount of taxation on the payroll for both companies and employees. Let's say they do, okay? That doesn't change the fact that the population is living on the same amount of land. And if they're living on the same amount of land, well, there's only so much land to go around, and therefore, at a certain point, things break. And that's ignoring, of course, government-owned land, both for the military, preservation, conservation, and other policies. The fact is, we do not have a sustainable system for retirement. It is just non-existent. Same with Medicare and Medicaid. They're not built within the concept of a modern state as it is currently. Especially when it comes to how to handle illegal immigration, which has created several issues. I do apologize. And to add on to this, we live in a rules-based world order which was set up under the pretext that larger countries would enforce the rules without taking advantage of the smaller countries. Let's face facts, never was the case. The entire principle of the UN is the idea that peace must be maintained, and so there are rules that people must follow, right? Human rights need to be protected. World hunger should be addressed. All of the things that the UN lists as important should be taken care of, right? And thus it falls upon the larger and richer countries to help the smaller and less developed countries to do that, to eventually develop and have those rules enforced. But that isn't the case. Freak. I do apologize throughout the video for coughing. I haven't drank much water today. However, let's face facts. Never was the case, as already addressed. To give some examples, there's France, who, after losing its colonies, tried to maintain them as best as it could with basically a French sphere of influence over its former colonies in Africa. Having a franc, basically what they used to use before the euro, for both their territories in French West Africa along with their territories near the Congo. And they were attached to the franc, the French one, and later the euro, to basically ensure that France was forever tied to its colonies and controlling them as best as it could. Here's the issue. How can a rules-based world order exist when those, like France, and of course Russia and the PRC, take advantage of their influence to assert their control? The US does it too. I'm not going to pretend like they don't. So does the UK. So do basically all larger countries to some extent. And plenty of smaller countries also violate human rights in order to achieve what they desire, even without foreign intervention. So you have a situation where there's a rules-based world order built on these ideas, these principles. But those who have the power to enforce it only do so if they see a benefit to themselves, and those who don't enforce it just run roughshod with what they can do without caring. Let's face it, if you give the opportunity for North Korea to take advantage of their position in this world order, they 100% will. And they have, to what extent they can. Of course, the PRC, Russia, France, the UK, Germany, and the United States have taken more advantage than most due to the simple fact that they have more power than most. But the fact is, these larger countries aren't the only ones doing so. Literally everyone is. The rules-based world order does not work because fundamentally it cannot work under the basic praxis of humanity wanting what they do. People will act in accordance to what they desire. Again, praxis. And in this case, if the praxis comes into conflict with the rules-based world order, guess who's going to win? It ain't the rules-based world order, especially because its main enforcer, the UN, or at least who's supposed to be its main enforcer, cannot do jack without the larger country's consent. And even when it's allowed to, it's very frail and weak in its ability to actually enforce things. A stronger League of Nations does not suddenly mean a strong world government, or even rules in de-escalator. Like, the UN is not that powerful. It has its moments, like in Sierra Leone, but generally speaking, the UN can do jack, all while other countries run roughshod over not only their own territories, but others' territories as well. And all the while, individuals are living without investing and saving for the future, especially in the first world, putting massive risks on themselves and the economy as a whole. If you don't have savings, yes, that is a problem for you, absolutely. It's also a problem for the rest of the economy. Because fundamentally, what the economy relies on is stability. The idea that an investor can trust that when they give money to someone, it will grow and make money back for them. The idea that you can go get a job, work, and get paid, and you won't get fired the next day. The economy relies on stability. For individuals want that security that their actions will actually have tangible benefits. But if that is not the case, people don't invest and save for the future, or they can't. Honestly, it's a mix of both, and people should still try to invest what they can so that they can save up money, even when poor, because guess what? Having that money as a rainy day fund is very useful, especially when impoverished. Well, then you're putting a massive risk on yourself, of course, but also on the economy. And the moment everything falls down, your lack of savings means you can't recover quicker, which means the people who you would buy from can't recover quicker. And so everything cascades, and the economy takes a lot longer to recover. The boom and bust, as we think of it, is caused by this fact. People aren't saving and investing. Rather, they're spending and doing what they want without preparing for the future, and so you get masses of consumption and then crashes. Consumption, crash. This is fueled by interest rates as well, but the biggest thing is that individuals aren't saving for themselves. Sure, inflation makes it harder, but even still, just some investing for yourself can help a whole lot for your local economy. If everyone did it, well, then the economy is far more stable, and you don't have as much of a problem with the boom and bust, or what's left of it, because simply put, even with a massive increase in spending, as long as the savings are there, the crash can't be nearly as severe, because people still have money to spend, and so they can level it out. That, of course, means levering out the spending to some extent, basically flattening the curve and allowing for steady growth. And our political elites rule such a system with built-in inflexibility, and without the room for adaptation to modern challenges. Remember, a lot of people can't act, because fundamentally, our systems rely on consensus of a majority that often isn't there, and who is refusing to change things because they rely fundamentally on the votes of those who don't want to act. This is a problem. And of course, those who don't have such issues are almost always backed by some oligarchs because, let's face it, the rule of the elite is guaranteed so long as the iron law of oligarchy holds true. And so we're in a situation where those who can act are acting with the backing of a select few who have their own interests and are more than glad to stomp on others to get it. while those who can't are basically stuck in gridlock because they can't adapt quickly enough. This system can be modified, though. Ranked choice voting is one way, as is the consistent desire that people have to replace things with younger candidates, which is very beneficial, especially in the West, where a lot of countries are facing aging populations. We need younger people, not because they're necessarily younger. It's not the age that matters, but the ideas. But we need the younger people, largely because they're less entrenched, and thus more adaptable to the situation at hand, and understand this is not a system that can last. They have less ties to the system, and therefore are more willing to modify it as necessary, to make it more flexible, or to shift it as necessary. I have my own beliefs on how that shift should occur, but there's still a shift that is needed. I'm sure plenty of people have their own ideas on what that shift should be. Now, if you're curious, no, I do not believe we should suddenly establish a totalitarian dictatorship. I shouldn't need to say it, but it's always good to say just in case, especially considering some people would consider me a tyrant. And so I shall make it clear, no, I do not believe in such a thing. But the shift is needed to something. We cannot just have this current two-party system in the US that is stalled, and the only time it acts is when it screws us. That cannot last. Something needs to change, and the only way to change it is to start with the individual and then push up to the system. Secure yourself and then talk to your politicians. Get them to fix it. If they don't, kick them the freak out of their office and replace them with someone who will. Remember, there will always be some sort of elite so long as the on-level oligarchy is in effect. But if an elite wants to replace another, they're going to need something to do so. In the case of a republic, that would be your votes. Use your votes as leverage and strangle them until they give in, putting your people in charge via ballot to ensure that the system can change as necessary. The world is not the 1940s, nor is it the 1950s. Our current system was built under those previous assumptions, and they thought that that policy could continue until the modern age and even beyond. No, it cannot. It needs replacing. And so, let's replace it. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.